Welcome back, everyone. I'm so excited you're with us on 33 Founders today because I'm here with Grace Garey, the co-founder of Watsi. Thanks so much for being with me, Grace.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So Watsi has funded healthcare for more than 4,500 patients in 21 countries. Can we start out with you introducing us to your work?
Yeah, so Watsi is a global crowdfunding platform for healthcare. So anyone can go on our website and see photos and read stories of patients from all around the world who need really life-changing but low-cost healthcare and can't afford to pay for it, and donate to directly fund care for a 12-year-old girl in Haiti who needs heart surgery, for example. And 100% of every donation directly funds their healthcare. We don't take a cut, and we're committed to total transparency. So we publish everything down to like screenshots from the transfers from our bank account to the hospital's bank account on our website for everyone to see. So that's sort of, in a nutshell, what we're working on.
You guys even have a document that you can see.
Yeah, so we have it's a Google document. It's a little janky, but we publish for every single patient that we post, the patient, their age, the treatment that they need, the money that they need, the doctor who submitted them, the privacy form that they signed, if they were fully funded, once the funds are transferred, the bank transfer, the outcome of the treatment, all of that. So we've got that for almost 5,000 patients now.
And so far, over 13,000 donors have helped.
Yeah, we crossed that milestone this week. That's exciting.
So it really rolls off the tongue. It's a good number.
Yeah, so it's a nice number.
Before we really dive in, Grace, I want to go back to the early days. You used to raise and donate money to UNICEF trick-or-treating. How do you think that Grace, the trick-or-treater, would feel about Grace of Watsi?
That's so funny. Is that information online somewhere? I must have told
online, yes.
That's amazing. I did, and I was like really excited about it. I think I would have been really excited. I honestly loved trick-or-treating for UNICEF. I grew up in Berkeley, and I grew up in probably the most stereotypical Berkeley family that you can imagine. Parents who were activists in the 60s and spent a lot of time sort of educating me and my sister about what the world was like outside of our little bubble and what our responsibility was. And that whenever we were presented with an opportunity, it was sort of our responsibility to be useful in the world, and so trick-or-treating for UNICEF seemed like this very tangible thing that we could do, right? It's like, oh, we're gonna go trick-or-treating anyway, like might as well do this and feel good about it. I think what I would have really liked, and I think part of the impetus behind sort of structuring Watsi the way that we did was that, as a little kid or as any human, when you've sort of collected some resources of your own and you want them to be useful in someone else's life, it can be a little bit discouraging to package those resources up, even if they're like a handful of quarters, and sort of send them off into a black hole. And, UNICEF is an incredible organization and they do really great work. And at the time, it wouldn't have been possible for them ever to report on where my $6
no emails then, yeah.
But technology is really changing that. And it's actually pretty easy now to show people exactly where their money goes and let them sort of, understand what their impact is. And so I think little trick-or-treating me would have been pretty excited about the idea that I could actually, not only do something that felt useful and meaningful, but that would also sort of connect me with a real human, maybe another little 6-year-old girl on the other side of the world who was really more like me than she was different. I think that would have been a pretty incredible experience for me to have, and I hope someone is having on Watsi now.
I'm glad you brought up the personalization because, as I was sharing with you, I learned about Watsi through the First Round Review. Camille Rick has published that awesome article about you guys, and my main takeaway from it on that Friday night was, oh my God, everything today is about personalization. It's about making people feel, and you said this perfectly, you should make people feel how they want to feel. Can you tell us about that in terms of Watsi and getting that email right after you've made a donation?
Yeah, I think what it really came down to for us was creating the kind of organization that we ourselves would want to donate to. And I think it turns out that has a certain amount of mass appeal, but we just thought about like, what would be the best thing ever after you have just, been really emotionally compelled by someone else's story and decided to share some of your resources with them, to get something that for you, might represent hope for them or health for them or the rest of their life. And I think for us, it was really just, giving people a sense that was meaningful, no matter how much, in dollars they were able to give. And that there's a real connection between them and the person on the other end, that your money's not just going into a black hole. And so we've really structured a lot of our communication around reinforcing that. And as we've talked to users and talked to donors about what they like about Watsi, often that's the same refrain that surfaces over and over again. And so we've been pretty thoughtful about trying to make sure that, every email that you get or anything you see out in the world about Watsi sort of reinforces that sense that, people are just people. And there's a lot of simplicity in that, but there's also a lot of power in that. Individual people give more money to charity than, most of the other institutions combined. And so there's a lot of power there that I think can be harnessed to do some really incredible things in the world.
And when it comes to that email, what's so amazing about it to me is that there's even a note from the doctor, there's a note from the family, and that takes a ton of work on your end, but to you guys, that's worth it.
Yeah, definitely. I think, it's definitely a balancing act. And I think, like I mentioned before, 10 years ago, this wouldn't have been possible. And I think you've seen charities struggle with this a lot, right? Is that there's this sort of, there's this desire on the donor side to be able to connect their money with an individual person. That's sort of a sexy idea. But it's been really hard to execute on that traditionally. And you've seen nonprofits often get in trouble for that, right? There was this whole sort of child sponsorship movement in the 80s that got donors really excited. And then it turned into this scandal because, actually the nonprofits, they couldn't really make sure that the money supported this person. And sometimes the people that they were showing on their website, weren't really the recipients of the services that they were purporting to provide. And, it wasn't really anyone's fault necessarily. It was just sort of this mismatch of operational capacity and the basic desires of most humans to understand what their impact is. And I think we've sort of landed in this really special time when it actually isn't that impossible anymore. And so we did sort of decide it was worth it. And in the early days of Watsi, there was a lot of figuring out okay, what's the best way to do this? How do we get, photos of patients, and how do we get real detailed personal information that talks about who this person is outside of their, medical condition. And so that's been sort of an ongoing journey in making it as easy as possible for doctors around the world to provide that information and send it to us. And a lot of that is sort of a technology problem that's been really interesting to sort of experiment with and solve. But yeah, it is for us just sort of one of those unequivocal goods that, people can feel connected to another person. That's just as important a part of our mission as funding healthcare. So we've sort of just drawn a line in the sand and said we have to be the best at that and figure it out.
A lot of that came from your work with the Universal Fund, which now there are 1,400 people supporting. No, actually it's 1,410. Sorry, it changed. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so working on the Universal Fund was a really fun project because it's sort of the first time that a product that we put out there really embodied kind of the bigger picture vision of Watsi. When we first launched Watsi, literally all you could do was donate to one patient one time. You could only use PayPal. There was a lot of stuff going wrong. But as we sort of, got caught up and enabled people to come on our site and donate to an individual patient, we were both thinking a lot on sort of the business side about, how it will be eventually important for us, to have some sort of recurring revenue coming in, like any other startup. And we also started thinking a lot about what we were hearing from donors, which was that, they loved connecting with an individual patient, but we had donors who were literally setting calendar reminders for themselves to come on and donate again. And they were like, I donate every time you send me a marketing email, and then I forget. And is there any way I can just set this up? And we're like, okay, people really want this. but how can we make this sort of an expression of like an important part of Watsi's story and brand, and not just like this sort of arm of the organization that's off to the side. So yeah, we really did a lot of thinking about what motivates people to give, and what would motivate someone to sign up to give every month. That's like a pretty big commitment. And it turned out that there were a lot of people who just had come to trust Watsi, and they loved connecting with individual patients, but more than anything else, that had taught them, not only when I come on to Watsi do I think that Sarah from Kenya deserves healthcare, and that Max from Cambodia deserves healthcare, but I just think every person on the planet deserves healthcare. And like, if I can get to know them as I'm helping to make it happen, that's even better, and that's great. But like, sign me up. I just want this to be a part of my life. And so we spent a lot of time, digging into what that should look like, and what the experience should feel like. And what we ultimately ended up with was the Universal Fund, which is now our monthly donation product. And it's going well so far.
One of the things I really love about Watsi is that it really seems that you guys are super scrappy. So when you hear feedback, you go and you figure out, hey, we're going to make this a reality. What have some of the oh my God moments been on the journey so far?
Yeah. Oh man, there have been a lot. Oh gosh, I mean, some of the really interesting, like positive ones that we never expected have been like, there's one related to the Universal Fund, right? Like, we launched it initially to this small group of beta users, and they started tweeting about it and posting about it in online forums. And we had sort of on a whim, like, unveiled on this original sort of like very basic landing page for monthly donations. It wasn't even called the Universal Fund, what number you were to sign up. And we noticed that people started tweeting their numbers. They're like, I'm number 8, I'm number 9, I'm number 10. And we were like, that's weird. Like, people really seem to like this. And like, it just kept happening. And so we were like, well, like, screw it. Why not? We'll just keep the number in the Universal Fund when we like really launch this thing. Like, let's just make it really prominent and see what happens. And it turned out to be this amazing incentive. There's like this sense of pride around like having one place in however many places, and incentivizing the next people to come and like occupy the next spots. So that was something that like we never would have thought would have been motivating, but it just sort of like, people started doing it, and it's always amazing when people sort of use your product in a way that you wouldn't expect, and we were just like, wow, like that's pretty incredible. I think one example on the other side is actually on those more medical side, less donors. But we, at the very beginning of Watsi, we had one medical partner that was doing really incredible high impact work, but they just really couldn't figure out the storytelling side of things. And we had this really elaborate online forum that asked all of these questions about patients and their lives and the impact of the treatment. And from this one partner, for some reason, we always just got like the same sort of one line over and over again, like, X needs Y, like yada, yada, yada. And we would have Skype calls with them, we would try and figure it out, and we just like couldn't figure out what the like missing piece was. So we ended up going to Kenya, and we like visit this partner, and I walk into the office where this, the Watsi stuff goes on, and the Watsi coordinator is there, and I'm asking her to tell me about her process. And so finally we get to the sort of patient interview process, which I was like just so curious about. I'm like, how is this going wrong? I don't understand. And I said, how are you conducting the interviews? And she said, well, I'm just using the form that you guys give us. And I was like, well, there are so many questions on the form, like that just can't possibly be true. Can you show me the forms that you use? And she goes into her desk and pulls out this stack of paper forms. And she had printed out all of the online forms that we asked for. And it turns out that the like prompt questions for all the details of the patient's life only show up as help text once you've clicked into the field in a form, which we had just never considered, like, wouldn't print, and that they would be printing these, obviously, because they're not taking like iPads around the hospital. And I just sat with her for 5 minutes, typed up the entire form in a Word doc, and we printed out like 100 copies. And I was like, okay, just use this one from now on. And the profiles were fixed instantly. And it was just this amazing, like, oh my God, how could we not think of that? But it was just as simple as like sitting with a user and like watching their process and figuring out where the mismatch was. So that's very much become our philosophy now, is just watch and listen.
It takes persistence to make it through all those things. And Ariel Kay, the founder of Parachute, shared a great insight with me. She said, always be persistent, but also be patient. How has that come to be for you guys as a young startup, and even at your time at YC when you're the first nonprofit to ever go through the accelerator?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great quote. It sort of reminds me of what YC famously tells startups that are having a hard time sometimes, which is that like startups are like cockroaches. Like you will only die until you decide to die. Like just you're alive as long as you decide to keep trying and keep persisting. And I think to a certain extent in like various areas of Watsi, that's totally been true. We've believed that certain things would work. And we haven't had the resources or the time or, the sort of time in the world hasn't been right for anyone to agree with us. And sometimes sometimes we're move on. But sometimes you're right. And something finally just sort of catches. And it's because you just kept trying and kept trying different versions of the same thing. And eventually sort of having that faith that you're working on the right things and that you're focused on the right things, and not being discouraged by the lack of like overnight success in any one area, tends to pay off. So yeah, the patience I don't think it comes naturally to any of us, but we've had to learn it.
On the days you had to be patient and something didn't work out, whether in the early days, it was now, and it just kind of crushes you in that moment. What do you guys do as a team to immediately bring back morale?
I mean, I think for us, we almost have an unfair advantage in that the entire nature of the organization is so mission driven. Like we don't really have to like sort of seek some higher power and like, well, the product is going to do this and like we're really going to revolutionize X, Y, and Z. Like I think we all believe that that's true, that despite any minor setback or discouraging thing, Watsi will keep sort of revolutionizing this space and we'll be able to do what we want to do. But I think what really like grounds me is just in thinking that like even on a day where it feels like everything on my list just didn't happen, or I didn't do a good enough job, or we failed in something, meanwhile there are 10 people joining the Universal Fund, and there are patients who are being treated somewhere halfway across the world because donors came on our website and decided to fund their healthcare. And, if an asteroid hit Earth tomorrow, that would feel pretty good. So I think that's sort of what we come back to, is just that, one patient at a time. If that's the worst thing that we'll ever do, then that's still pretty good.
I like that because I wasn't sure if it would add more pressure knowing the impact that you're making. But it seems like you guys really had that in check and use that to always be moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does too, right? Like that there's so much at stake for each of these people, and they really are people. And that's definitely a lot of pressure, but it's also very, very motivating.
When it comes to looking towards the future, I was so intrigued with Thomas's interview, one of your engineers, when he was saying that for the future, you guys are really exploring it. One of the ways is that you have incredibly rich data on the patient side and on the hospital side. He cited that there's 2 hospitals right now in Nairobi next door to each other. They share a cafeteria, and one of them charges $550 for a treatment. The other one charges $950. So huge gap there. Where do you see that you'll be in that data space?
Yeah, it's this really interesting thing that, I think when we first started Watsi, even at its most simple, we are an exchange of information and money, right? And so like what that information is, like the data might take the form of like a photo and a qualitative, story or description of someone's life, and, a everyday donor like you or me comes on, and we can sort of look at that data and feel compelled to donate because we understand where our money's going and we can see our impact. And seems like the resources are being allocated very efficiently, like 100% to this person. And that's very attractive to everyday donors. I think what we're also starting to find is that we're collecting some of this more structured, sort of more detailed data. And that's what appeals to a whole additional group of donors, which is really like these institutional health funders, right? Like there are people with bigger tranches of capital who donate $50,000, $500,000, millions of dollars to global healthcare. And the biggest problem in that space right now is that like, there's a lot of waste. Like if, some big healthcare financing institution is going to donate, $10 million to healthcare in Kenya, there are so many like subcontractors and like people siphoning off various things at every stage that only a fraction of that is actually going to make it where it's intended to go at the end of the day. And then to make things even crazier, they're like waiting for basically a paper annual report at the end of the year about how that money was used and trying to use that to figure out whether or not to like give the same money to the same place again or like readjust and give it somewhere else and trying to understand their impact. And so one really interesting thing that we're seeing as we're starting to gather more of this data about, what it costs to deliver healthcare in different places and what that money gets you, and the fact that we can deploy that capital instantly to fund healthcare for real people and report in real time on what it's doing, that could really change how healthcare is funded around the world, and it could make the existing resources a lot more effective because $10 million could actually be $10 million instantly in healthcare for people. But ideally, it would also make it more attractive for, everything from everyday donors to these bigger funders to actually give more money because they can have some faith that it's going to end up where we say it will because we have this layer of transparency and data to show that it's.
When you discuss offering, though, I think it's the perfect transition to chat about your decision to run Watsi like a startup. What was the catalyst for that?
I think we always sort of knew that Watsi would be a startup. I think the more like explicit decision that we made was to be a nonprofit versus a for-profit. And we totally did have that discussion. And I think there are great arguments you can make on either side. And people now ask us this a lot, like how should we incorporate? And I think for us, it ultimately ended up just coming down to trust. Like when you're providing healthcare, we could have totally structured Watsi in a way where we had a double bottom line and like, by the book, we really were responsible for generating, social impact, with our profit. And, I would have trusted us as people to do a good job with that, but it's just a lot harder to communicate that. And I think it would be really hard to overcome as a for-profit, people's fear that, you're profiting off of someone's, misfortune essentially and sickness. And so I think the more technical decision that we made was that strategically it would be better for us to be a nonprofit. But I think that we would be a startup and that we would be a technology organization. That sort of came first.
And that's what led you guys to be the first nonprofit at Combinator. Tell us about your experiences there.
Yeah, so YC was amazing for us. We were the first nonprofit to join, and so we didn't quite know what to expect. But it ended up being sort of a perfect alignment of what we needed at the time and what YC really tends to focus on, which is, you've found an idea where there's some heat and some traction, and let's focus on getting it in front of as many people as possible and getting as many people using it and giving you feedback as soon as possible, which is exactly where we were. At the time that we were invited to join YC, we all still had jobs on the side. And so this was the first time that we could quit our jobs, work on Watsi full time, and really focus on okay, we found this little nugget of a thing that seems like it's gonna work. How can we pour some gasoline on this and try and experiment with a few different things here? And what's the best way to start to really prove that this is a concept that has the potential to scale? So yeah, I think the best parts of YC for us were just the focus on those things, the ability to focus and the encouragement to focus on those things. Our peer network was incredible. We're still really close with a lot of the other companies in our batch. One of the companies in our batch, Teespring, donated office space to us for the year after YC. So it was a really positive experience for us, for sure.
Who were some of the mentors that shaped your path while you were there?
Paul Graham was involved from the beginning. He sort of became an informal mentor before we joined YC. He sort of discovered us on Hacker News, and he would email us questions sometimes and and suggestions, and so we'd sort of established that relationship with him. And when we came to YC, we managed to sort of crystallize that. He's just someone who really deeply understands what we're trying to do, and anticipates a lot of the challenges we're going to run into, and also has this sort of magical ability to just like strip down the problems to their sort of like vertebrae and figure out like, okay, here are the bare bones things you need to focus on. And so definitely built that relationship in YC, and it's still involved today. A lot of the other partners were really helpful. Jeff Ralston is amazing. Garey, Jessica Livingston has been incredible help and sort of mentor, especially to me, since YC. And then, yeah, a lot of the peer companies in our batch have stayed like advisors and friends and testers of all of their products. They're always the first ones to use something. And so we've sort of been the beneficiary of that network too.
You mentioned that Paul Graham is able to take a problem and really distill it down. What have you learned about that habit from him?
I think it's sort of just having a really clear picture of both what your vision is, like what are the most important things. And then I think part of it is intuition, and part of it is experience, and like taking a list of 100 things that someone's worried about or excited about, and being able to decide like which ones are going to, most desperately and impactfully, affect your ability to achieve that mission. And so I think we've always had pretty good intuition about that. PG also has great intuition, and I think where he added a ton of value, especially when we had first joined YC, was in the experience side of things. Like we just had no idea what was normal, and YC has seen so many startups come and go that, we would be freaking out about something, and PG and other partners would be able to say like, listen, this happens to everyone. Don't spend much time worrying about it. Like this is something that if you don't focus on it now, like that will kill you. Or like if you let that opportunity slip away, like you're crazy, because that's going to be amazing. And so just being able to sort of like measure things for us a little bit was really useful. And I feel like we've accumulated some experience now so that we're able to do that better on our own. But still, as an organization scales, the sort of magnitude of the stuff that you're looking at really changes also. And so while I now would feel totally comfortable like talking to us in YC a couple of years ago and being like, oh, like no big deal, everyone goes through that, and like, oh yeah, this is the important thing. We're now sort of like coming up on this whole new set of things to think about that I feel like is where it's really nice to have someone like that to run ideas by and lean on and just sort of sanity check stuff with.
In the moment, sometimes it feels like the world is imploding, and it's something so small.
Yeah.
One of the things you guys are focused on right now is raising your second round of funding, and Chase just wrote a great post on why you guys chose to fundraise. You had 138 meetings and you raised $1.2 million from 14 donors. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, so it was really sort of an experiment the first time around. We'd all worked in nonprofits before and sort of seen the traditional fundraising model, which is that you just perpetually fundraise and you sort of day to day balance thinking about your core product and your core programs and your beneficiaries and the donors that you're trying to serve simultaneously and the people that you're trying to get to like keep the whole thing afloat. And that it's exhausting. It's sort of distracting. You're just not very good at doing either thing because they're very different things. And so I think when we were wrapping up our time at YC, we saw these other companies that we'd spent the last 3 months with, and we were growing on pace with them. We saw them going out to go focus on fundraising for a couple of months and then stop fundraising and then like get back to work. And we were like, well, that seems nice. Maybe we can try that. And then we started to really think about it, and it actually makes a lot of sense too. It sort of resolves a lot of the typical problems that you see with nonprofit fundraising, which is, that you never really have a defined set of goals. Like this money is meant to do these things, because it's just sort of always like money's coming in and money's going out. So it forces you to be a little bit more focused about like, what's your plan? Like what are the things that you want to achieve in the next couple of years with this round of funding, and how is this funding going to help you do that? Also makes relationships with funders a lot clearer. There's this sort of strange dynamic with a lot of nonprofits and their funders where, every time you see them, even if you're just like meeting up for coffee, they're always, nervous we're going to hit them up for money. And it's this very awkward thing. But we've sort of built this cadence in where, when we're fundraising, like, we don't have to ask as bluntly, because everybody just knows. It's like, we are accepting money right now, and like, here's what we're going to use it for, and this is what we're talking about. And so now's the time to get involved. And if we're not fundraising, like, we really just want to keep people involved for their advice and their thoughts and their ideas. And people know that, and they can sort of expect that that's going to be the nature of the relationship. And so I think that's made our, personal and professional sort of advisory relationships with our funders a lot stronger. So the experiment went well, and we're doing it again now. So it's been good.
Is there anything that you're doing differently this time around?
It's a good question. I mean, I think we started with a group of people who had already sort of bought in the first time around. And so I think that's one big difference, is we had people who we've been sort of keeping in the loop for the last 2 years. And now, we're sort of like primed and would either say no, or they'd already decided they wanted to be a part of the next one. So that's been different, definitely. And almost every single one of those people has decided to join again, which is amazing. I think the only other major difference is that most of the people involved in the first round were individuals. There are a couple of foundations that traditionally support nonprofits. They're mostly like sort of more early stage focused, like impact investing kind of foundations that supported us back then. But we're at a place now where we actually are starting to approach and make sense for some of the bigger foundations. We're still a little bit of a small fry for some of them, so we'll see how that goes. But we're definitely starting to talk to some more people who are really viewed as like institutions in this space, and so it's a different kind of conversation, but it's been fun to learn.
When you mentioned that you guys feel a little bit like a small fry right now still, even despite your growth, it reminded me of a great insight from Scott Birnbaum when he said that no matter how big you are, you should always punch above your weight. You guys are only a team of 8. Tell me how that insight applies to Watsi.
Oh man, I mean, I definitely feel like we're punching above our weight.
All the time.
We've got that part covered. I mean, I think that is sort of the way to go, though. There's another very cliche saying that I also think is sort of true for us, which is shoot for the moon and land in the stars, which I think is sort of what we do. We set goals that are higher than I think we could ever realistically achieve, and that's really, motivating. And usually we end up exceeding sort of whatever the reality kind of goal is, because we have this bigger thing in mind. And I think our aspirations are those of a much larger company, both in terms of headcount and whatever else. And so, we just sort of make it work. But, I think one thing that we're starting to focus on more now is transitioning from being sort of a small, scrappy startup that does the most with the least and all of that, to really investing in some of these areas that we figured out worked. Like, we know now pretty much what's going to work. And the limiting resources on most things is execution. And so we're starting to get serious about hiring and bringing more people on to help us execute in these areas. And, I think we should definitely continue raising the bar, right? When we're a team of 15, I hope that people think we're a team of 50 or 100, based on what we're producing and what we're doing.
You were talking about the team, though, and so, I mean, being 8 is still very small, but it's bigger than you guys were before. How does it feel now when you walk into the office?
Yeah, I mean, that's really the amazing thing, is that, I mean, first of all, like, I still can't believe that, like, this is my office, and this is where Watsi is a real organization, right? Like, it seems crazy that we can get paid, enough to like live lives and also come to work every day and get in an office and get to work on this. Like, that is crazy. And so the fact that like I have that for myself, let alone that like there is this team of people, these like incredible A players who also are just like bleeding heart and soul mission. That really blows my mind that we've been able to sort of attract those types of people, and imagining that scaling to 10, 15, 20, 30 people is the most exciting thing in the world to me, because one thing we've really started to see is that, we grow where we focus. And, as we, add resources to a particular area, or we start to focus more on a particular area, we just see it blossom. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity to layer on more resources and more, manpower and bodies and more sort of inspired, excited people to come and join the team and really make a tangible impact. But it does still just blow my mind that, here are these people who, they're just like a part of the family now, right? And we're all like shaping the direction of this organization together, and it just exists out in the world. And people are donating to patients right now, and I'm just talking to you. I'm not even like pressing any buttons or anything.
Not making your profile.
Exactly.
I know you guys are focusing on hiring a head of content and then also an engineer. When you look to hire, being such a close-knit team, especially one that does punch above your weight, what distinguishes an A player for you?
Yeah, I think, we have sort of this set of values that we've sort of come together on in the course of hiring over the last few years. And most of them are just sort of personality traits that are good for both our size and sort of the type of organization we are. Like, one is pragmatic. We found out that like it's just really important and like and sort of predicts the both happiness and success of someone at Watsi if they are a pragmatic person. Like, it turns out we're all just sort of people who have a goal in mind, and you sort of start with like what the world looks like if you succeed, and then you sort of work backwards and you're like, okay, so like what do we need to do, and like what do we need to get good at to arrive there, versus like starting with a thing. Like, I just want to do this, and like I don't care if that's the most useful thing or not. Like, this is just my thing, and I'm like dogmatic about it. So that there are some sort of like traits like that we really look for. That's like, oh yeah, this is going to be a good fit. Like, you sort of see the world the way that we do. I think skill is something that's really important to us now, because we're very small. We're all sort of departments of one. And so looking at people who just love whatever their field is and have sort of been lifelong learners in that area, that's really exciting for us, because as good as you are at something, when you come in, like, to be really successful, you're going to have to get a lot better and just sort of teach yourself. And so people who really like doing that in whatever their area is really big for us. And then, yeah, people who are mission driven, who want to do something really meaningful with their lives, and will be excited to spend their days working on something like this, which, I think anyone would be crazy not to be. But yeah, I think that's really what it comes down to. And then the other thing, just sort of from like a cultural perspective, is just sort of looking for things that we're missing, right? Like, I think we haven't gotten so good at like predicting this yet, but it's been a pleasant surprise when we add people to the team. It's like someone will just bring this trait or this idea or this sort of worldview or this lens that we really like didn't expect from them, and that also just adds this sort of multifaceted, dimension to Watsi, which is really great. And so even if we don't know what it is yet, hiring people who we feel like it's like, okay, they're going to bring something sort of different to the table here, that's been really successful for us too.
That lends to a great insight that you just shared from Paul Graham when he said that brutality breeds brutality and kindness breeds kindness. So how you treat people matters more than you see. And you described it as the one trait you'd like Watsi to embody. Why did that resonate so much with you?
So it's so funny. I saw him tweet that, And I was like, that's a nice thought. That's very cool. And then I saw that he followed it up with like a link to a patient who he had funded, whose story made him think of that. And, I think this was a patient who'd been through a lot of, hard things in her life. And she turned around and came out of it, really motivated to help people, right? Like she had experienced the best and the worst of life and humanity. And she just sort of came out of it saying, well, I want to put more of that good stuff into the world. I've seen both. And being the recipient of kindness made me want to, breed more of that. And I really do. I think that's really what Watsi comes down to for me is I think that people are inherently interested in putting out good things into the world and to making other people's lives better. And I think the path to that is not always clear, and it's also easy to sort of forget that. But I think one of the really magical things about the internet and technology is it's bringing the world a little bit closer together, and it's exposing people to both the most brutal stories and the most incredible stories of human kindness. And I hope that it'll become easier for people to be inspired to be exposed to a story of kindness and want to perpetuate more of that. And I mean, it's amazing to me how often in a follow-up from a Watsi patient, in the update after they've received care, probably the most common comment that we get from them is that I want to help other people the way that you've helped me. Like, that's just the takeaway that they tend to have, which is so amazing. I think that's such like
goosebumps.
Yeah. It's such a like window into humanity too. Like the first couple of times I read that, I was like, wow, what a unique, special thing. And, of course it is, but like, it's almost more amazing that like, that's dominant. That's like what most people come away from this feeling. And so, yeah, I guess I would hope that as Watsi scales that sort of sensibility can scale too, and maybe affect something, broader than healthcare or medical funding, right? That this is like the way that you look at the world.
I love it. All right, Grace, I want to spend the last couple of minutes just chatting about life. Watsi aside, Watsi aside, fill in the blank. Grace Garey is
happy.
That's a good one. What makes you the most happy?
I mean, I think aside from Watsi, which makes me very happy, getting to work on this is really, it's great. I don't feel like I have a normal job that I like sink into the weekends away from. But friends, family, people. I think, as I've gotten out of college and out of all of the places in life where you're just sort of constantly surrounded by people and it's very easy to keep in touch, it's really like crystallized for me, like who are those people that are just, I know, going to be in my life until I'm 100. It just, how do you make sure you just never say no to them? Whenever they want to hang out, you hang out. And like, whenever there's an opportunity to do something for one of them, you do something for one of them. And that's made me very happy is both, just being around them and sort of like settling into a life in San Francisco where I'm surrounded by those types of people has been really fun. That makes me really happy. I've gotten back into dance. I was a dancer in like, middle school, high school, college, forever. And I sort of stopped for a while, but, I've been doing that again on the side. It's fun to have something, outside of work that's challenging and fun and exciting and sort of another part of your personality that you're feeding. So that's been really, really cool for me too.
I love that you said that because I just read something in First, and I don't remember from which thought leader it was from, but he was saying that despite how great, so you've done amazing things at Watsi, you should go out and try to learn something else so you remember that it's hard to learn and you always have it in your mind that you need to be getting better. Is that what dance is to you, or is it so familiar that...
Yeah, it's definitely that. I think it's part that like being reminded that it's hard to learn, but it's also like, I mean, I don't feel like I'm quite at the point in my career with Watsi where I'm going to forget that it's hard to learn. Like, I'm definitely where I'm at one. Like, still learning, like, every single day. And it's hard. And I think, like, something that I hear from, other people running startups at this stage is that like, I mean, you just put so much of your like self-worth into this thing, and its success or failure, or like your success or failure in this like microcosm of life is like everything. And I think like a lot of people in this position are very prone to that. And like, I'm definitely no different. I'm like submerged in Watsi. And its failures are my failures and its successes are my successes. And like, that's a very like emotional thing. And so I think part of what dance is for me and sort of these external hobbies are like, you may have like not done something well today, or like, you may be not succeeding at this thing you're really trying to like get the hang of or learn at work right now in sort of the next phase of Watsi. But like, here's something that like is more linear. Like, it's still hard to get better at, but it's like, if you put in the work, you can expect that you will just get better. And that like, you will have this satisfying return, which like startups just aren't that way. Like, it can be really unpredictable. You can put in no work and like something just takes off, or you can like put your soul into something and it bombs. And it's just like, it's sort of unpredictable, and that's like hard on the heart sometimes. And so it's nice to have something where it's like, okay, you put this in, you got this out. Like, great, that's fun.
You mentioned your family and friends and the people who are really important to you. Who's had the greatest impact on your life so far?
Oh gosh, that's so hard. I don't know. I think my mom's a really big one. That's sort of a like cheesy answer, but
she won't think it's cheesy.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, she, growing up, my memories of her are like her leaving at 5 a.m. when it was still dark out, and coming home in time to, make us dinner. And, she just poured her entire, life and energy into other people. And she loved it more than like anyone else I've ever known. She still does. But she's a public high school teacher, and she loves to teach, and she loves her kids. And growing up, for most of my like childhood, she was teaching at a pretty rough, underfunded school in Richmond. And she was commuting there, and she was working really long days, and she was like battling with an administration that, was very unorganized. And, she just like put out so much energy into the world that was like absorbed by other people, but somehow like reflected back onto her and like rejuvenated her to like do it all over again the next day. And, I think I didn't realize until I probably went to college and was exposed to so many different types of people and parents that they had, how like rare it was that I had a parent who I overheard so many times telling people how much she loved her job, and how much she cared about the people who she was, trying to better herself professionally for. And she now, I mean, she's still working. She like will probably cling to the classroom until somebody like kicks her out. It's just like the love of her life. But she's now like a leader, right? She like leads all these technology in the classroom things, and she's speaking.
Great.
Like, it's amazing, but it all just comes from this like real passion and love and like grit. Like, she did a lot of stuff that like wasn't fun to do, but like she did it because it sort of resulted in this end thing. And I think that's part of where I get that like sense of pragmatism from myself, right? It's like, what do I have to get good at in the day-to-day to like have this be how I leave the world? And then I'll like figure that out. And sometimes those are fun things, and sometimes they're not fun things, and like whatever, you just like, you do them, and you like find joy in doing them because it results in something you think is important. So I think she really taught me that.
I love that you said that, because it reminds me of El Luna's post. Did you read The Crossroads of Should and Must?
Oh yeah, I did. That was great.
So my favorite part of the whole thing was when she said, when you look for your dreams in real life, where do you go? Where do you go when you look for your dreams, Grace?
Oh, man.
Blame Elle, not me. It's her question.
Sorry?
I said blame Elle, not me. It's her question.
I know. Oh, gosh. I don't know. I think the best thing anyone can possibly do is sort of like align the things that they're dreaming about with the things that they're sort of obligated to do every day, which is like hard to do, right? But they say that, you should be working on, if possible, as your job, like the thing you think about in the shower. And like, what do you think about when you're like in a quiet space and your mind sort of wanders and you are like having these sort of dreams about like what your life should be and, what's meaningful to you. And, I definitely have moments like that are sort of like escapes, like quiet moments where I feel like I can really like, leave my current life and think about, what's important and what I'm excited about and all of that. But I feel like somehow I've sort of also stumbled into a position where like most of the things that I like dream about are they can be accomplished rooted in some of the things that I'm like, it's like, hey, well, done dreaming now, like going to work on Monday, oh, actually, like I can make progress on some of this stuff here, or with my friends and with my family and with the life that I've sort of set up. So, I think I definitely like seek out some of those escapes and like quiet times and probably don't have enough of them. But I feel lucky in that like I never catch myself like really wishing for something or hoping for something that's like so outside the scope of anything that I either have or is like attainable, right? Like, okay, you can change your mind, you can switch directions, you can focus on something else. I think that's something that like I never knew when I was younger. I thought like there's like a linear path and like you make your choice and you follow it. It's like, oh, actually no. I've been positively reinforced in life for like doing something totally different and deciding one thing and then doing something else. And so that's been nice. It's sort of a roundabout answer.
No, that's perfect and very well said. Last question, less serious. What's one question, personal, professional, athletic achievement from second grade that you've always wanted to be asked but nobody's asked you?
Oh, geez. That I've always wanted to be asked. I mean, no one's ever asked me this, but I volunteer it all the time. No one ever asks me about like why dogs are the best animal on the planet, but I will like defend that until like I like almost every dog I've ever met better than like most humans. I
agree with that.
It's so, and like most of my friends tell me that my spirit animal is a golden retriever, which I will happily take. I think that's totally legit. That's sort of a random one, but
why are they the best animal?
Because they just like find ways to be happy doing everything. And maybe it's just they're really good at like making the best of like a boring situation. But I actually don't think that's what it is. It's like they're just like they put love out into the world and they get more love back. And I think they seem like very acutely aware of that that's like happening, right? Like they're not just like sort of surprised. They like expect love and then they like give more love. Like it'd be great if people were like that.
I was just gonna say we should all try to do that.
Totally.
Grace, I think that's the perfect way to end it, and very, very odd transition, but to
most friends and family, they'll be like, of course you ended talking about a dog. So weird.
No, I'm going to connect it because giving that love and happiness and finding it in any circumstance is exactly what you're doing with Watsi. So how can everyone get involved, learn more about what you're doing, and hopefully contribute?
Yeah, so just check out the website. It's watsi.org. Donate to a patient. That would be amazing. And just tell people about us if you think what we're doing is cool. I think that's the most important thing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with me today.
Yeah, thank you.